So, hi guys, and welcome back to part two of Boundaries with my two friends, Michelle and Marissa. Give them a wave. So, the last podcast we ended on, how do you set boundaries? And I think Marissa was talking and Michelle both talking about how you set boundaries with your family. And just to pick up on that point, I think most people understand, at least logically, that they need to set boundaries in their relationships, maybe to a lesser degree in friendships, but I don't think people even consider setting boundaries when it comes to family. And I think you'll find a lot of the time when you've complained of feeling drained and instances like that, it will be family members that drain you. So I tend to agree with Michelle, and it doesn't really matter whether they're family members, partners, or friends. I think they should be treated the same way. If they're draining you or they're negative or they're not good for you, then you can't love people from a distance. So now that I've clarified that, I just want to continue just podcast. So what do you think, guys, stops people from firstly setting boundaries and secondly respecting boundaries in relationships?
Very good question.
Go on, Michelle, you want to pick it up?
I think it is to do with self-esteem and how they've been treated in past relationships. Because if in the past your voice didn't mean anything, you probably go into the next relationship still within that kind of mentality that there's no point in me saying anything. My voice is not going to mean anything. And it is very unhealthy. And you do sometimes find, from my point of view, for most of my close friends are women. So I find with women, you find they have the same sort of relationships over and over again. And it's because they come from one relationship where there was no boundaries to another relationship where they're still not putting no boundaries. And men and equally women, they pick up on that. If they can see, hold on, let me keep pushing it a little bit more. And if this person ain't reacting to it and ain't saying nothing and I'm getting away with it, then there ain't no boundaries for me. So I can actually do what I want to do. So I do think it's someone not understanding that your voice is powerful and that only you can tell people how to treat you. You know, I can speak up for you all I want when I'm there, but when I'm not around you, if you don't speak up for yourself, then this isn't ever going to work. So it's definitely about the person knowing, my voice is important and I'm going to make sure everybody who's around me knows what my boundaries are for all of them so they know how to treat me. In regards to breaking them, it is probably learned behavior. If they know,
Yep.
she gave me this boundary, but I was able to do this, that, and the other, and she was okay with it. So they know they can keep pushing it that little bit further. So yeah, it's a lack of respect as well. Because if I tell you I'm going to leave, or this is going to be the consequences of your actions, and then you do it anyway. When people say, "Oh, I do love you," but like, no, you don't, because you don't even respect what I said to you. I said to you, I warned you, and you still did it. So there was no respect for that boundary that I had. You was just like, whatever in it. So you did what you wanted to do. So now I have to then set a new boundary, which is I'm not doing it with you, and then just keep it moving. But yeah, it's about being firm. It's about being firm and, saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Don't just say it for the sake of it, because if he knows that, yeah, she said that to me, but last time I was able to do this and that and I explained it and I got away with it, then they're going to keep doing that. So yeah, it's about setting those boundaries quite early on and letting them know I don't play these games with you. Too
See,
old for
so
that.
she's covered all the four C's there and the consequences. You notice that you need the consequences at the end.
Yeah.
Because if there are no consequences, then there's no reason for me to respect your boundary. And actually, you picked up on another good point. If I genuinely don't respect you, that's another good reason why I won't respect your boundaries. So, Marissa, I'll ask you the same question. What do you think stops people from firstly setting and then respecting boundaries in their relationships?
I think probably when you get into any relationship or in relationships, you're all full of that whole, high expectations, everybody's all lovey dovey, all, so you don't ever consider or really think about how do I want this person to treat me? I think naturally these things are unspoken in your head, you know, this is how you want to be treated and this is how you expect the other person to treat you, but you never say it. It's just always an expectation that's never spoken, right? Same goes for the other person. You Miranda through your relationship for however long, and all of a sudden your expectations are not being met and boundaries are continuously being broken, right? But you're continually letting them pass. And so right, it's not gonna happen
So
again.
that's a brilliant point because when I was looking at this podcast and I was looking at different scenarios, you've actually hit on something that kind of really struck with me. red flags, just us ignoring our boundaries.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are because you know at some point you know yourself, right? So and especially if you've had a couple of relationships, however long they lasted or whatever, you think to yourself, right, always the next one you want something different, right? Or you would still be in the last one. So you must want something new and different out of the one that you're in. And I think a lot of the time people are so caught up in those very hedonistic early days when it comes to relationship, we don't ever take the time to stop and think, actually, I need to be honest with this person. I need this person to be honest with me. If I want this to go somewhere, and as much as I want to be in my happiness, I've got to have a slight practicality about how I want this to move forward.
And
You know,
that's a
you
good
spoke
point.
about
That's a good,
communication. It's about communicating that. You
yeah.
know, if you don't communicate it, it's not going to happen.
And,
You
and
know,
and that's another good point, guys. And Marissa's kind of getting towards that, I believe. It's something that people don't often think about when they're in the hedonistic, lovey-dovey stages, as you call it, Marissa. But are we laying boundaries for conflict in our relationships? Because everybody has a different way of dealing with conflict. You know, some people want to speak straight away. Some people want to leave the house. Some people want to kick the cat. People deal with conflict in very different ways. So if even at those early stages you're not putting those boundaries there in advance, you're just going along waiting for shit to happen. That's the easiest way.
But you
I
see,
think.
I'm the opposite of what Marissa said because I do right from the very start. I don't go into the whole we're on cloud nine, everything's perfect. I go in already. My glasses are not on. I ain't got the rose tinted specs on. I haven't got them yet. I pick them up as long as we go along. At the beginning, I can see clearly. I've got 20/20 vision, and that's what causes me issues. So it's weird. It's the opposite of what she said, but it causes me issues because I go in thinking, what is he up to? Who sent him? Like, is he everything he says to me that I've heard this before, like, and it didn't come true. So I go in completely opposite, but still reaching the same kind of destination.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't go in with the tints on. I'm very much realistic. I don't trust you straight away as soon as you speak. But in my head, like I'm saying that, but I think when I'm interacting, I probably come across really like, oh, she's really sweet. She's really like welcoming. But inside, I'm thinking, I don't trust you. Well, you up? I'm watching everything you do, and I'm taking notes in my head of everything you said because I know I've got such a good memory. I remember. That's the thing with me. And when I remember what your name was, I remember your face, and I remember what you said. So it causes me problems because yeah, I go in so realistic that it bothers me because I
Yeah.
try and okay, forget about all the past and all the signs you've seen. Just go in with open mind. And I can't. I really can't because of learned behavior, because of
Yeah.
past trauma. But that is where I have to try and change, I guess, and change my
Yeah.
boundaries.
So
Um,
I think you're both similar in the sense that you have boundaries, but I think you're both very different in the way that you put it out there. I think you're very direct, Michelle. I think if somebody was to ask you what your boundaries were, you would tell them. But I think maybe communicating that, maybe some vulnerability might be behind you not wanting to
no, I'm
say
not good
that.
with, I'm not good with
Yeah.
the vulnerability.
But once again, for the purpose of the podcast, I think what stops people from setting boundaries, I think people that have any issues or difficulties saying no will have issues setting boundaries. And people that have difficulty hearing no will have difficulty respecting boundaries. So with the difficulty saying no, we're looking once again at the compliant people, or, I don't really like to use people pleasing too much. The negative connotation of being a people pleaser is that you're putting other people's needs before your own. And that is actually the anti to boundaries. Boundaries are a way that you enforce your needs. So what I would say is people that, people pleasing, maybe rescuers. And I think in terms of real people, what it looks like, people that don't respect boundaries, we're looking at bullies, potentially narcissists, people that have trust issues and real deep insecurities and fears. And once again, having the difficulties, Michelle picked up on it earlier, the low self-esteem.
Mm, yeah. I think one of the things you said about like, I would never consider myself, I would never think I'm a people pleaser, but hearing the things that you've said, I for me, one of my biggest boundaries, is when it comes to work.
Mm.
So working in the financial sector, I've moved across, different departments and in different areas. But for a very long time, I was working crazy hours with no thought to my personal life or anything like that. you know, I was just doing it. I was just doing the work and I was just getting on with it. And regardless of if there was any recognition for it for myself out of it, for me, as long as I was doing a good job and the work was getting done, yeah, time was not an issue. Time was not a factor.
Wow.
But it's not until COVID happened and things had to switch up. And, then I realized, actually, hold on, there's no time for you here. You know, I was doing crazy hours. I was never making sure that I did my 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I was doing 9 till 9 or 9 till 10 or some days I was logging off at 5, but logging back on again 2 hours later to
Mhm.
continue doing the work. And that was crazy, you
Yeah.
know? And now I've had to take a step back and say, actually, no more. I will be doing my 9 to 5 because that's all you're paying me for.
Yep.
I care about, as long as I do a good job during those 9 to 5 hours,
Cut it
yeah,
off. You cut
you've
it
got
off.
nothing to say about my work or whatever, then that's it. And since I've done that, oh my gosh,
And fine, because a lot of
what
people
what
do not.
the 5 o'clock?
So I'm glad that you brought that up because a lot of people don't think about boundaries when it comes to their work life. Like I did say it and in the other podcast, but there has to be a cutoff point. Are you always available or work? Are you always contactable? Are they able to contact you by email, by phone? That's ways that we're not switching off. We have to be very boundary when it comes to work because that's where the burnout comes. So I'm glad because you guys are actually making me think of things that I didn't even think about. But let's take the wheels off a bit and let's open up this conversation a bit more. So we already spoke about our red flags, just like us ignoring our boundaries. So what about situationships, girls? Are they just relationships without boundaries? I'm interested in what you got to say about this.
Situationship,
I mean, I
I
can't
don't
speak
think I've
from
ever had a
personal experience.
situation.
Yeah. I can't speak from personal experience, but I don't know. Is it
What's
is it a
in the
situation?
first instance? I'm a woman of a certain age. Can you look
Yeah.
in that? What is a situationship? It's something that
I
I
was
hear.
gonna say,
But I did a little bit of research because I had to be sure about this. And it's like a relationship with no definition. And that to me is a relationship with no boundaries. And apparently, if you're in a situationship for more than 6 months, it's no good. It tends to not go anywhere. So I think in the early stages when you're seeing each other and stuff, I think it's okay to be in a situationship. But guys, if you're
A fancy word for a link. In our day, we just called it a
yeah,
link.
we called it a link.
Yeah. It wasn't going anywhere. Both of
Yeah.
ladies
Or a booty call. Do we still use that?
that's
I'm
what
like,
it was. But now they
yeah.
just call it a fancy word. It's been around for donkey's years, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. And there's always one person that tends to want more, isn't it?
That's the and let's see
right.
that for me, my cut-off point was 3 months because at 3 months I start thinking, what is this? And feelings start getting involved. So for me, if I got to 3 months of you, then that's a miracle because that was when I bounced because I know that I know it's me who's going to catch feelings. I'm not
Yeah.
even thinking about how you're feeling, but I know for myself, them girls that could just hit and run, it's not for me. I fall in love. I want to get married. I want to do the whole thing. So I can't do the whole linking things. It's not, yeah.
So no situationships for Michelle. Marissa, I know you. You're a relationship type of girl.
Fine.
I don't think you had a situation. I don't even know if you've ever had a link. You don't have to tell me. That's one of the next steps. But I know you're a relationship type of girl, and you've had one relationship that lasted nearly 20 years. So you are a good example in my life of boundaries. But because I've got my friends here, and I think this is very interesting because I like to illustrate for people how boundaries come up. Like in your friendships, I suppose female friendships, and if you guys have male friendships, do we have to tell our friends everything? Because I think most friends, us, but we kind of understand that you share with your friends what you want to share. But I think the younger generation in particular, do we have to tell our friends anything?
I think
I
when we
don't
was
think
in
so.
school, you had a group of friends. That was your friendship group. Everybody hung out together. We was the same group of friends. As an adult, I've got friends from different walks of life, and I'm usually the common denominator that just brings everyone together. So the conversations I have with you, Leanna, are not the same conversations I'm having with, say, Zoe,
Yeah.
Dasha, or with Joni. So it's not that you don't have to tell your friends everything, but you have different relationships with different friends. So there are some of them, you know who your friends are. You get some friends that are judgy. So, all right, I'm not going to tell her about this that I done because I know she's going to have,
Yes.
she's going to give me her opinion. I didn't ask for it and I don't need her judgment. I'm a big woman. Stop telling me what to do. So, yeah, it's one of them ones. So you tell certain people certain things because, some people are going to be like, it's funny because when I speak to some of my friends now as older women, I think to myself, "But you're being judgy, babes. This was you 20 years ago, and I was the one who was letting you do what you did. Now you're judging me."
And I think
Yeah.
That's
How
a
the
there's a
tables
lot
were
of it.
turned. Yeah, it does. Their memories weren't short. Like, yeah, you used to live that life, and now you give funny eyes because I'm talking. Like, what were you doing? But yeah, you do. You don't. I don't think you have to tell everybody everything. But it's weird because I hear some people say, "That's my best friend. That's my best friend. That's my best friend." I've got one best friend, and she's been my best friend for 22 years, and that is Zoe. But I've got lots of really close other friends.
Yeah.
So when you get into the whole thing of this is my best friend, this is my best friend, this is my best friend, that's where the lines get blurred and people get in their feelings because if I'm your best friend, how come she knew something about you that I didn't?
Yeah, and I think that's
So
where the possession comes, and I think that's quite
yeah,
that unhealthy when friends start feeling like they own each other. So, Marissa, what do you think? We've been friends for 30 years, and I'm
Yeah.
sure for the most part we know the majority of the major stuff that's going on in each other's life. If you have any issues, I'm sure you would call me, and vice versa. But
Yeah.
we've been friends for 30 years. Do we have to tell each other everything?
No, I don't think we have to tell each other everything. I think, like Shell said, I think, you have different friendship groups that offer you different things and give you different things. And you'll just naturally feel that you can say one thing to one person and naturally in another conversation, say one thing to another person. I don't think there should be an expectation. And I think, especially with women, a lot of the time, because we are driven by emotion, I think a lot of the time the expectation is in a friendship group, oh, I must know everything. Like, there isn't anything that you should keep from me or because we're friends. But, we're human beings at the end of the day. And it's not, I don't think it even goes down to a level of trust then. I think if you've had a long standing friendship with somebody like years and years and years, but you don't feel that for whatever reason, you want to share a bit of information with them, I don't think that should be held against you.
Yeah,
No, I don't
I'm
think
the
that should be
same.
held against you at all.
I think it's all to do with trust. I think friends should always feel grateful when other friends share with them because it shouldn't be taken for granted that we have to share. So let's take the rules off a little bit more. Like, do we have to tell our friends if we're dating one of their friends?
I had this come up when I was younger actually. Oh, it was I think in that circumstance it was different because she had been linking him over the years. There was nothing ever there. They just had sex together. And then we started talking and I wanted to tell her, but I didn't know how to approach it.
Yeah.
So I just sent her a text message one day and she was within the group of friends and they told me what her reaction was. And she wasn't best pleased, but he wasn't hers kind of thing. They was never anything. They just used to have
Yeah.
sex.
Yeah.
So I think it depends what the circumstances is. Someone who's very close to you and you know who your closest friends are. So if it's someone, I think if it's someone that you've dated, for instance, then that's definitely a no-go. But if it's somebody who is just your friend, I think it depending on where you feel in that relationship with that person, if you're comfortable enough to start telling people, then to just let you know, oh, I've just started speaking to so and so, we've been on a few days.
But
I don't think
like a courtesy type of.
yeah, I don't owe it to you, but I just, I respect you enough and you're a good friend to me that I just want you to know. Because also, I think it helps as well because there may be things that I don't know about this person. So he's your friend, but there's bits that you know that I don't know. So
Yeah,
me
fill me in.
be
Fill me in.
helpful. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, what's the tea? Like, tell me about him. Do you recommend I do this, or are you gonna be like, babe, stay away? This guy is not good news. So it can be helpful. I don't think it's something you should expect. It's something that if somebody's told you, you should be appreciative that they felt that they could tell you that. And yeah,
Yeah. So I think Marissa, I'm gonna like half tell the story and you can pick it up. I think
Yeah.
it
That's
does it
good.
does depend. You know where I'm going. You read my mind, guys. So I really do think it depends. I think it can cause situations. So
Hmm.
many years ago, my younger sister and Marissa's twin brother were dated, and they dated for many years. I think they called each other first loves. They're very serious.
Yeah.
But there was a period of time when me and Marissa were not aware that this was going on. Although looking back, I could probably think, I've seen Leon's face a little bit too many times. But, I thought I was just getting two for the price of one. But Marissa will let you know. And just to confirm what we said when they came to us and told us.
Yeah, we said that, what happens with them doesn't impede on our friendship. If they have a disagreement or whatever, it stays between them and I don't want him coming back to me and then
Vice versa.
me having to go to Liana and have this conversation and stay out of it. Like, and to bring that to present day, I'm currently seeing a friend of my brother's, but he is he's also my friend, but he's much closer to my brother. And he initially, my brother had a not so favorable reaction
Mm.
when he found out that we were seeing each other. And I think that's just because he wanted to know that it was going somewhere, right?
Yeah.
He just wanted to know that, we weren't messing about,
Messing
that it was
around with this.
actually going somewhere, that we were serious about each other. But that is something that I have implemented in my relationship with my partner and with my brother. And I've said to them, I don't even carry messages.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how much, right? I've set the boundary. I don't even carry messages. If one got a message with the other, you've got his number in it, call him. Yeah. Don't
And
don't use me as the
that's
middleman,
very important because we navigated
right?
it, Marissa, didn't we? Because
Yes.
them
Yes.
two were together
Yes.
for
We
years.
have to.
They had a whole
Yeah.
relationship, a whole breakups, and we
Yeah.
didn't even notice because it had nothing to do
Right.
with
There
us.
you go.
I don't think
It
my
had nothing to
sister
do with.
ever came to me and
I
said,
think that's a little bit too close. For me personally, I don't think I would take that risk because if you, as my good friend, is my safe person that I talk to and, anything I've got going on, but you don't want to hear it because it's your brother and you don't want to get too close, then it will make our relationship weird because you don't want to hear me talking about my sex life with your brother, but we talk about our sex lives because we're friends. But you don't want to hear about your brother because it's weird, right? So I've never done a sibling thing with any of my friends, and there's definitely been cousins or siblings that I've been like, yeah, he's all right, but for me, that's the boundary.
mm,
I don't
I think,
because of that issue, because of the fact that I can't ever really talk to you about, and any issues I have, how can I go to you about your brother? It's weird, isn't it? I don't want you coming to tell me about my sister. So,
it's
Mhm.
tricky, isn't it?
yeah, I just
It's
Yes.
don't.
tricky. Mm,
Yeah. That is. I mean, I'm lucky. It's something that I've said. I said to my partner, I I don't want you to interfere between mine and my brother's relationship,
Mhm.
right? So it doesn't matter if my brother gets on my nerves or I feel like I'm going to have a gripe or whatever. I will make sure I've got to check myself and make sure I'm not griping to him about my brother because I
yeah,
don't want to hear his opinion,
yeah,
right? Because as much as you want to lean on your partner, I know for myself that's his brethren. So
yeah,
therefore, I might be offended by something he says about my brother. So therefore, I don't do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I've said to my brother, I said to him, look, I don't want you to have an opinion about me and my brother. He won't have an opinion about us, and we won't talk about my brother because those are within that circle, within that triangle. Sorry, those have to be the boundaries.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, to keep things on a straight and narrow.
They have to
Once
be.
those lines start crossing, yeah, then it does get messy, and it's
Yeah.
messy needlessly if you don't say those things up front. If you
Mm.
don't set those expectations up front,
Mhm.
you might easily get carried away with yourself, and that's not fair. You know, that's not fair on anybody. Least of all, it puts a strain where it doesn't need to be. So, yeah, I think it can be done. It
Yeah,
can
but
be done. I like it.
you have to really be very boundary because it would be very
Yeah.
easy to stray across that
Yes.
line. But
Mhm.
you kind of mentioned something else that's got me just thinking a little bit. Um, and I think, Marissa,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna change from what I was gonna say, and I'm just thinking. So we've looked at how do we have to tell our friends everything, and what about if we're dating friends, family? We've looked a bit like our situationships, just relationships, but I really want to dig into some of you guys' difficulties. What difficulties do you think you have with boundaries?
Personally, I don't think. Um, I don't. As much as I'm sitting here on this podcast and saying this is why you should and blah 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 blah, I think for myself, I feel for myself, I can definitely honestly hands up and say I've only probably really consciously implemented boundaries in my life in the last couple of years. Right? Again, a lot of the boundaries in a lot of different areas have been unspoken, and I think that's why I have like a close circle of friends a very close circle of friends, I think I can say, if you've got more than 5 friends, like 5 close friends, or even 10, if you can count them on both hands, you're doing good. But if you've got an abundance of that, then for me, that's too many, cogs. There's too many
I'm
plates
all about
spinning. Too
quality
many.
over
It's
quantity.
true. It's true.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
few
That's too
quality
many
and
plates
obviously
spinning.
intimidate. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I haven't in my life, I know for sure, as I'm older now, I can sit back and reflect and say, I haven't spoken up for myself enough. Where counts and where it matters. So personal relationships, in friendships, at work, you know, and now I'm of an age where I think to myself, actually, it's about my quality of life. It's about what I want out of life. And I think as long as you're respectful when you're speaking about your boundaries and what they mean to you, you should be able to say it. I think you should be able to communicate that, whether that's in a friendship, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's in a relationship. I really do think you should be able to say it. One of the things that I think stops a lot of people doing it is fear.
Yeah.
You know, we're scared of being that vulnerable or saying how we really feel about something. But I think if we said it more, we wouldn't, get trapped so much.
Yeah. And I think
And
it's
that's something
uncomfortable.
I've
It's
learned.
uncomfortable when you first start
Mm,
speaking up for
mm,
yourself, but it gets more comfortable. So,
yeah.
Michelle, I want to ask you the same question, because it's important that while we're listening to podcasts like this, we're looking at, you know, how boundaries plays out in our life. So what difficulties do you think you have with boundaries? I have an idea of what I think.
I don't think I have difficulties, but I'm sure you will say my difficulties and don't let anybody in. And it's made me say, this is my safe space. Do not come around here. Stay over there. You know what though? I feel like I'm so open and I'm just like honest and I'm loving to everybody, but everyone's like, no, there's walls all around you. But I don't feel like I've got wall. This is who I am and this is what you're gonna get. You better learn, deal with it because this is what it is. But like I'm 44 years old now, babes. Like what I don't know what the world wants for me. This is who I am. And I probably should be maybe a bit more, like you said, vulnerable. I do see where you say those vulnerabilities are lacking. I definitely see it. But I haven't found anyone that I feel I could trust enough to be vulnerable.
That's important.
I don't think it's that I can't be vulnerable. I just haven't met anybody that I'm like, okay, I trust them enough to just be vulnerable and just say, otherwise I'll be in relationships and I could be on my way out to be kicked and living on the street. I'm not going to ask a man to help me because that's my boundaries are that I don't do that kind of thing with men. Like there's not money involved and you're not paying my bills and things like that. So for me, I probably do need to let people in a little bit more and stop suffering and like doing things on my own. But I don't know. It's always worked for me. It keeps me safe. It keeps these guys from breaking my heart because I don't let them in. There's
Mhm.
no way for them to break it if I don't let them in. And I'm not, I don't know. I think I'm in a different position to a lot of friends my age. I've got 4 children. I've got 3 grandkids. I'm not looking for any more kids. I had my tubes tied, so I'm definitely not looking for any more children. So I'm at the space where if I meet somebody, it's because you're coming to help enrich what my life already is. If you're coming to bring stress, drama, yeah, you better stay there because I'm not doing it. I don't have the time. I'm tired. I'll take iron tablets. I've got no energy. So please don't try and take a little bit of energy that I've got. I don't have the energy for it. So I don't think I have issues with setting boundaries. I know I definitely put boundaries in place. I probably should just be a little bit more vulnerable. But, when my king comes along, that will happen naturally. That would just be something that it will happen organically. I won't even know it's happening. It will just happen because I feel like I can trust him. So he hasn't come along yet. So those walls will still stay around. But I feel like I keep boundaries, but I think I'm nice and I let people in where they should come in and then I just know where to keep them out as well.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, because that's what your boundaries are. They're very personal to you. You understand? So they have to be with what you feel comfortable with. I mean, I've spoke about it on the last podcast I did with the authentic self, that growing up, being the oldest, I was quite a compliant child. So I was always very compliant, and I'm grown up and without realizing, become a bit of a people pleaser. So I've had loads of difficulties, and a rescuer. So I've had loads of difficulties with saying no to people. So even though I'm quite assertive, and if you piss me off enough, I will tell you no. Like my default reaction it tends to be to say yes. So when you have difficulty saying no to people, then you tend to get taken advantage of. So I think,
Remember, naturally, I'm a shy woman. I never used to talk when I was younger. I never used to talk to anybody. I was shy. through most of my 20s and probably early 30s. So now, having found my voice, you're not going to shut me up. I'm going to say exactly what I want to say now, because even though I've still got that shy tendency to me around certain groups, but I can go in and say what I need to say. In the workplace, I'm the one with the loudest voice. When we're in meetings, you're all sitting there wondering what's going on. No, let's ask them what is going on, because we don't understand what you're saying to us. And I'm always like kind of the voice of the people. And I don't do it because I want to talk for everybody, but I don't like, not knowing what's going on. I like to ask questions. I like to be sure this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. So yeah, it's helped me setting boundaries and actually learning how to speak up and, put people where they need to be put and keep them where they need to be kept. It's helped me as I've gotten older, but as a 20-something-year-old, as a teen, I was in the corner not saying anything. I remember I used to go to barbecues. I think back to all the barbecues I went to as a 20-something and all the food I missed because I was so shy to go and wasted it.
You make up for it now.
Babes, as an adult, on the first time, where's the food? As I'm looking like, I need to know where the food is. Yeah. So, yeah, being able to speak up and talk for myself has helped me so much in life. I get fed very early these days. So I don't waste it.
I think I speak up for others and not, I think I'm, more likely to speak up for someone else even more than myself. I'm quite protective. But for the last 5 minutes or so of this podcast, I think I won't bother asking you guys this question as a general. We can just kind of sum it up together. But how are we reinforcing boundaries? So Marissa, you said that, boundaries is something that you've worked on. And I think knowing you as I know you, if someone continuously kind of breached your boundaries, you probably would reward them with some distance, less energy. And Michelle, I know that you would walk away. So when we're looking at reinforcing boundaries, once again, for the purpose of the podcast, I think there's a few ways you can go about it. So in the first instance, you want to be communicating with that person, reminding them of what these boundaries are, because people make mistakes. Maybe they didn't really understand the first time. So that's an option to have a conversation about these boundaries. I think what people tend to do when their boundaries are breached, they tend to either withdraw their time or their energy as a punishment, tend to go back and try again. And if this continuously happens, then we need to have a review. We need to really sit down and look at this. And this is like final warning time. But guys, it's the ending.
Oh, no, it's not HR. They're not HR though. What we giving final warnings? What's this?
No. I know it depends. Yeah, it depends. So, obviously, your warnings will depend on yourself. But what I'm trying to say is that there has to be an escalation each time. So obviously, I'm a therapist. So with my clients, if they break the boundary the first time, we'll have a conversation. The second time, we'll have a sterner conversation. And the third time, the consequences will be applied. And then it doesn't matter what you plead, beg, cry. That's it. So you have to always be prepared to walk away. And I think, particularly in friendships, a lot of the time people stick around for history. Like we've been friends for so long and they don't even have things in common anymore. They're different people. They're wearing masks. They're not telling each other anything. They're not genuinely even want to be around people. But now I'm like one wrong move and you're out. So, if people are not respecting my boundaries, which I'm not very clear at, maybe potentially communicating, but I think I'm very clear when you do something I'm uncomfortable with. So there is an element of communication, the walking away part and cutting the umbilical cord. So, you guys today have been absolutely amazing. And I think you've given the audience a different take on boundaries. Is there any final thoughts that you guys have on the issue of boundaries before we wrap it up?
I think I had a question for you, Lily. And one of the questions, if you can sum it up before we go, is like, what boundaries do you struggle with most, do you think?
That's a very good question. I think over the course of my life, I think I probably struggled more with applying boundaries to my family because of the role I have being the oldest. But I think once I realized how much of a drain it can be sometimes to be everything to everyone, I put those boundaries in place. But I think what I really still struggle with is my intimate relationships. I think I could be vulnerable in my friendships. You guys are testament to that. I'm happy to confide. But when it comes to my romantic relationships, my intimate relationships, I still find it very difficult to trust. And because I find it difficult to trust, I find it difficult to be vulnerable. So I kind of find it hard to express my needs. So therefore my needs are never met and it becomes a cycle. And I tend to attract like quite narcissistic people. I'm quite much of an empath. So I've had issues where the people that I'm attracting are not respecting my boundaries anyway. So I think that's the real issues I've had with boundaries. Not really my friendships. I've been lucky enough to have some good friends and when I've had friends that are a bit iffy, it's very easy for me to walk away because I have such good friends. So yeah. Michelle, any last questions in the last 2 minutes? Anything you'd like me to sum up? I hope that sums it up for you, Marissa.
No, it's been really good. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I know you've been telling me for a little while about my letting people in and being a little bit more vulnerable. So it's something that I plan to work on going forward.
Good. And I'm glad. And I think, Marissa, for you, I think you're a lot more boundaried. We've been friends long enough for me to see the change in you. And I think you see the change in me. So, guys, I want to give my friends a round of applause and thank them for coming on because they've given us a different look. Because, Lee's a therapist, but Lee's not just a therapist. Lee's a person, a real person out here in the world with real friends. And these are the conversations that you should be having with your friends because all of this is mental health, relationships, self-care, whatever boundaries are for, teaching people how to treat you is all good for your mental health. And if you don't have boundaries, it's going to be the opposite. So thanks for joining me today on Tap, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.